Hello, good afternoon and welcome back to Create and Craft. My name's Debbie Shaw. We've got a very special hour for you this hour, and I know it's something that we've all been waiting for a long time because, yes, Kaffe Fassett is in the studio with us today. Kaffe, welcome to Create and Craft. It's lovely to see you. Just to mention, we are going to be featuring Kaffe's biography, autobiography in the show. It's Dreaming in Colour. Every single one of the books that we have available for you has been signed by Kaffe. He sat through all of these in the green room earlier on today. So if you order today, you'll have your signed copy. It's £25, it's hardbacked, and it is fascinating reading. In fact, for any of those of you that were around in the 50s and 60s, it's a trip down memory lane for you too. It's 263648. Right, that's the housework over with. You've been such an inspiration to so many people over the years, but can I take you back to when you were younger? What was your inspiration? How did you become interested in textiles?
Well, my inspiration was actually just the people around me. There was a lot of creative people in Big Sur, where I grew up, which is a tiny little place on the coast of California, very, very wild. And we all ran barefoot and things, and we were very outdoorsy kind of people. But I remember there were, my parents built a restaurant, and so here was this fantastic restaurant. Yeah, which attracted not only a lot of people to come and eat there, but also a lot of interesting people to come and work for us. You know, out-of-work actors and writers and people like that. So there was a lot of interesting souls around. And some of those liked to knit. I mean, there was a couple of waiters that were actually knitting, and they would make what they called dump sweaters, which was just taking old yarn that they would find in the charity shops and things, you know, and they would be knitting up these crazy sweaters full of stripes. So that was my first kind of the idea that knitting could be colorful and interesting.
And it's all about the colour in your life, isn't it?
Totally. I've always been an absolute color addict, except for one short period where I only painted white paintings, and that was just very odd. I just did all these white on white still lives, and that was my total obsession, and I didn't want any color in those paintings. So.
If we go back again to your childhood, it wasn't textiles and yarns that you first started becoming interested in. It was painting, wasn't it?
That's right. I started out as a fine artist. I went to an art school for a very short time and ran off when I decided how they were, what they called education. And then I began to, I came to England to set up a studio and to do painting. But I basically was fascinated by fabric because I was putting fabric down for my still lives. And as my still lives got more colorful, eventually I caught on to the idea of pattern and color. I began to think those patterns are wonderful, and some of them were embroidered. And so when I saw a lot of knitting yarns in Scotland, and I realized here was all the potential to make beautiful colored fabric, and I could just do it by rubbing two sticks together. You know, I had to learn how to do it. And I asked a woman on a train going back down to London from Scotland, "Do you know how to knit?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And she showed me how right there, and in 20 minutes, I was knitting away a great swatch of color, you know, lots and lots of
You've still got that first sweater.
I do have that first sweater, which is kind of a mess because all the ends are hanging out and everything else. And that will be in an exhibition that I'm having in March in London.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you've got any questions for Kaffe, do come and ask them. We're getting emails coming through already. It's studio@createandcraft.tv. I've got lots of questions that you've sent in already that we're going to work our way through. So you came to England for a visit. Why did you stay?
Well, you know, this biography is a love letter to England because England taught me so much. I totally changed my personality when I came here. I became more thoughtful, and I love the old world. So here we were in the edge of Europe, which was just so rich and beautiful, and Scandinavia and all those countries. But the museums in London, like the Victoria and Albert Museum, were just so packed with wonderful ideas.
You had an exhibition there, didn't you?
Yeah, I did eventually have an exhibition there, which was just amazing, because I had practically lived in that museum from the day that I came in 1964, when I first arrived as a, you know, young artist.
Following the Beatles.
Following the Beatles. They were just bursting on the scene. That was a very, very wonderful time to be in London, I can tell you. Yeah, extraordinary.
I was listening to an interview I found on the internet with you, and you said that when you when you stepped off the plane and you came into England, it was like stepping into warm water.
Yes.
You felt at home.
That was the thing. It was absolutely natural to me. I felt that it made sense to me. I mean, the humor, I liked the idea that there weren't so many choices in life too. That you only had 4 channels on the television. I think there was only 2 or 3 then, and that sort of thing. I liked the idea of kind of restraint. I loved everything about England, actually. It was the old world.
But you have travelled the world.
I have.
Do you have any other favourite places?
I think that the Orient is very extraordinary to me. You know, I'm fascinated with any place that loves color and loves pattern. So Japan is just wonderful because they're playing with patterns the whole time. I come away with little sketchbooks filled with ideas from Japan. And then Mexico is also a wonderful place. India, Africa, all these countries where color is the kind of luxury of the country. And even mostly the poorest people are producing fabulous color that they live with and dress in, you know.
From the emails that we've been sent in already before the show, most of the emails are asking you about colour.
Yes.
And how to put colour together. This is from Dina, and she said, please could Kaffe give some pointers about how to select colours that go together in a project? Is there a trick that can be used to put colours together? For example, if you have the same fabric but in 2 different colourways, where both contain another particular colour, would that third colour be sufficient to link the 2 main colours? She says, oh gosh, I hope that question makes sense.
Yeah.
But are there rules about colour that one should bear in mind?
Actually, that question makes a great deal of sense, and I wish that I could give her a formula, because if I could, then I would write a book that would say, here's all the secrets of how to play with color. It would be so easy. The trouble is, color is very, very complex and very personal. The main thing is people try to use very little color and restrain it when they're first starting out. Do just the opposite. Use tons of color. Go over the top. Be vulgar. Be bad taste. And then you can pare it back a bit. You know, if you notice there's certain things that are really disturbing the color scheme. But lavishness is the name of the day. You know, it's a wonderful, and particularly when you're making a product, you know, like a little greeting card or a beautiful a jumper or a quilt. You want to make that rich and personal so that it's worth making by hand and giving it that time. So I just use lots and lots of color. And don't, you know, if you want to, one little tip maybe is to have a kind of color bias where you have a sort of green-based quilt or a red-based quilt. But be sure to drop into it wonderful, rich colors that go with red or with green. And they can be anything, that, you know, just keep putting colors together until they kind of sing for you.
Is there a particular colour that you're always drawn to, that you'd always use?
No, but I work with palettes, very distinct palettes. I love my Islamic blues, and I get into this rich turquoise and blue and cobalt and all of that together. And then I have another palette that's all rich, hot reds and magentas and, you know, very, very operatic.
Does it depend what mood you're in, maybe?
Yes, exactly. And then I'll have very soft, quiet browns or grays. You know, the colors of stones on the beach can be a beautiful palette. But most people just live in that palette, so I try to get them to be a little more experimental and a little more emotional about color, because it can be such a wonderful emotional burst.
Well, the whole of your studio, all 3 floors, is a whole palette of colour. In fact, it's a riot of colour.
Yeah, it was nice when you were walking around. I could see your eyes were just dancing with it.
There's so much to see. I went
There
to see
is.
Kaffe and Brandon, who he works with, a couple of weeks ago. And obviously Brandon was so proud of where you actually work. I had a tour of every single room. This is Brandon Mabley. You may have seen him on the previous shows that he came to us with Rowan, with knitting products. But it's everything to the colour of the staircase that you're not quite sure about, the wallpaper on your walls where you cut out shapes and you make it more three-dimensional than just putting it there on a roll.
Yes.
And I think more than anything, it's the keepsakes. Because it's a whole journey when you go into your studios.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, to me, walls are just blank canvases, you know. So I paint roses, paint roses on them. I do everything, you know. I'm very free and easy with my space, because I think it should be. You should be able to express yourself in your house.
You were designing ribbon when I came down to see you, and Kaffe was actually painting strips of card with watercolour.
Yeah.
How does the process work? If say Rowan come to you and say, we'd like some ribbon designing, do you have something in your mind, or do they give you a brief as to what they want?
Well, you know, each thing that you design, like doing patchwork fabric, you have to think about how it's going to be cut up in smaller pieces. When you're working with ribbon, it's a long, thin story. So what you have, and you have a repeat that is like about that long. So you have to make that story tell itself in that thing. So a little cloud form that's kind of beautiful, or a series of flowers or fans, or maybe a snake or something, you know, that's going to fit into that nice rectangle and tell its story. And you only have like 6 colors or 8 colors or whatever it is, and you have to make it, you know, so there's all these restrictions, which are fascinating and stimulating for the imagination. I love it.
It's the same.
And then I just paint it out and I give it to the printers, and they...
So it's the same when you're knitting, isn't it? Because you start and then
Yes.
things evolve.
Absolutely. You know, when I'm doing a lot of needlepoint all the time, and when I did my first needlepoint design for a kit, I just painted it out and I sent it to the people to be stitched up. And what came back was so ugly, was so not right, that I absolutely withdrew from that way of doing things, and I decided I'm going to stitch out every design. And so now I draw a design out on a canvas and I stitch every stitch, and then I send that to the printers and I say, print up something that's going to look like that. And this is a piece I'm just working on, which just gives people an idea. This is going to be a big panel of trees, and what we've got here is a drawing that I draw just with waterproof pen, and then I just stitch out every leaf, every detail as I'm progressing. So the whole thing is just being made up and very spontaneous.
Actually, the needlepoint that you have on some of the furniture in your studios,
Yes.
I've never done needlepoint before, but I did email Brandon when I came back,
Yeah.
so I want to get started.
Yes. It's such a wonderful thing. You can go and buy an old banged up chair in a charity shop or a junk place, and then you can cover it and make it a museum collective type piece, you know, cover it with shells or roses or just stripes or anything interesting, you know. It's a wonderful way of
Well, there's
decorating.
no right and wrong, is there?
No. You can make something very personal that is unique for your house.
So what would you enjoy most, Kaffe? Would it be inspiring other people or creating?
Do you know, it's both. I love to inspire other people, but I can get exhausted, you know, going out and constantly speaking to people and answering their questions and everything else. So I need to go back and put my soul back together, and I do that by working. You know, I was just stitching on this when I came up here, and so I can sit quietly and just stitch, and I feel peaceful, or knit, or do anything, you know, sewing little patchwork pieces or the binding down on a quilt. It all makes me feel good.
Do you use a sewing machine?
I don't know. I don't do anything that has anything to do with the machine. I don't drive, I don't type, I don't use computers. Everything I do is by hand.
Oh.
And I really celebrate the use of hands. You know, there's a kind of rhythm and a sense of timing that comes when you're actually making something. Ideas are coming to you, ways of adjusting that or doing a new version of it, you know, another colorway of that idea. And it comes to you in a nice way when you're actually working with your hands. So I feel it's a very creative thing to do.
We've had a couple of emails from you. This is Janice from Hendon, and she says, hello, Kaffe, Debbie, and the great Create and Craft team. I'm so excited to see Kaffe today. It was because of your designs and use of colour that I started crafting when I was younger. My first project was a shawl that I designed and knitted using different textured yarns and colours, and it was exhilarating not to follow the rules. So thank you for coming to Create and Craft today. That's Janice. Thank you, Janice. This is Jen. Good afternoon, Debbie and Kaffe. As soon as I heard that Kaffe was going to be on Create and Craft, I was so excited knowing that I could hear from one of the most inspirational artists I've ever heard of. I love all of your beautiful fabrics, and I love the beautiful quilts that you've created. On another note, we used to live about 2 miles away from each other, so it's a good job I didn't know, or I'd have been knocking on your door every week. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah,
and Jane from Chesham said, hi Debbie, and a huge welcome to Cave. I have to tell you how much of an inspiration you have been to me. Your enthusiasm is infectious, and it makes my fingers itch to create. Your use of colour is second to none. I've knitted many of your patterns in the past, and I have a cushion cover with cats on